Ooh, scary.
Why haven't you checked the children?
It all began with a scream over 911.
Good evening, Slasher fans. You're here as always with a brand new episode of Slasher Studios Horror Podcast. I'm here as always with my wonderful co-host, Andrew. Andrew, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I still got those post-convention blues, but other than that, I'm trucking through. How about yourself?
Not too bad. I mean, I pretty much spent the last couple of days getting all of these DVD orders for this Memory Christmas out. So, I mean, if you were a backer or you pre-ordered it or you were a cast and crew member and you wanted a DVD, yours should be coming in the mail any day now. I just got all of those out, so pretty excited about that. Got all 500 of them in, and I think I got like 90 of them out the door right away, and that's not even including like the 60 that we sold at the con. So we're doing pretty good there. Hopefully we should be getting our Blu-rays fairly soon, and then as soon as we do that, get those, I will be hand numbering them. And those will be probably going up the next day for cast and crew and backers.
Oh God, that's so exciting.
Yeah, it is. I like a lot of it's just so crazy. Like it just seems like, just like last week we were working on this movie, but it's been a lot of fun. So I guess before we kind of start off with our topic of this week, which is going to be best and worst Nightmare on Elm Street deaths, I guess we can talk a little bit about Horror Hound Weekend. Perfect segue. We were there last weekend in Indianapolis. It was the Nightmare on Elm Street series reunion. God, I don't even know where to start here. I was kind of at a table for, I would say, 95% of the time, so I think Andrew will probably have some better stories than I will. Who did you meet? Who was awesome? And what fun stuff do you have to share?
Well, I mean, I didn't meet a whole bunch of people this time just because I feel like a lot of those guests I had met already at different conventions. So pretty much, I mean, I went to Kelly Jo Minter again because I just love her. And I went and met Kim Myers because my friend Larry met Kim Myers, and she was just very nice, very chill. And I was just like, you know what? You could give the heroine of Nightmare 2 some love, because I feel like she's always overshadowed by kind of Mark Patton and his personality, but everyone kind of forgets that she was the heroine. I don't know. It's hard. Plus, when I was telling her, I was like, you know, people kind of underestimate you because like Kristen and Alice and all them, they beat Freddy with powers. Like, Lisa did not have powers, and neither did Nancy. So it's just kind of like, I feel like she should get some more love than she actually does.
No, I completely agree with you. I met her at Texas Frightmare, and she was an absolute delight. She was so nice. Did you get a chance, I already know the answer to this, but you got a chance to meet Heather. How was that?
I did. It was good, but it was very quick. I mean, she had a very large line, and she had just gotten there, and it was kind of like, you got your 3 seconds. That's really cool. What's your name? All right, picture, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Next. And I was just kind of like, okay. I mean, she was very nice, and I mean, I was very happy to meet her, but I mean, sometimes with those, and I'm sorry, I know I keep saying I mean a lot, but with those bigger ticket guests, I feel like sometimes it's hard for me to like justify getting their signature because it's such a like fast paced, like hi bye. Whereas like Kelly Jo Minter, I sat and talked to for like 20 minutes. Like I always like to go to like the more kind of vague guests, I will. I'm kind of mad that I didn't get Ira Heiden because he seemed very, very nice.
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean. I had met Heather and Amanda before at Horror Hounds 2013, I believe it was. And even her line there was pretty long. I was probably in line for a good hour and a half, but there was definitely more of a chance to kind of talk, I think, because those were the only two Nightmare guests. That year, I believe, was the Terminator 2 Aliens reunion. So there was definitely more sci-fi driven, so there wasn't quite as many slasher fans. But yeah, it was great to meet him then. And yeah, I got to talk to Amanda again. Shockingly, I don't know how this is, but she remembered me from last time. I got in line and she's like, "Hey, like, how have you been?" And I'm like, "What?" I couldn't believe that. And she asked me if I still had the Tina art. I'm like, how, like, you've met so many people. How do you remember that? But she was so nice and she was so sweet. And I talked to her and she's like what? She's like, "What are you up to?" Like, as if we were like old friends. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, no, that's totally cool. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I kind of just ran around the floor. I met a whole lot of people. I worked the table a bunch, and I saw the Funhouse Massacre, which I thought was a really good time. So other than that, I was kind of lame.
No, I really wanted to see that. I didn't get a chance to see any of the movies this last weekend, which kind of sucked. I wanted to see that one. I wanted to see Tales of Halloween. I wanted to see Turbo Kid.
I missed Tales of Halloween.
Was there a lot of people there for the one that you saw?
Yeah, it was a pretty large turnout. But I mean, it also had Robert Englund in it, so he was there like introducing the movie.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, the director of that movie actually came to our table, I want to say Saturday. It might not have been Saturday because, as you guys know, if you go to cons, the dates just kind of blur together. But he actually came to our table, and we were talking about 80s slashers, and he was probably at our table for a good 20 minutes. I mean, he gave me the card for his movie, but it wasn't like he was trying to sell anything. But at the same time, he bought our movies, which was really awesome and really nice. So, yeah, I'm interested to see that one. It sounds like it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I was really impressed. It's one of those it works great with a crowd. I mean, everybody in my audience was just hooting and hollering. I was hooting and hollering. I mean, it was a really cool setup. So I was very happy I went and saw it.
Awesome. Yeah, we will definitely have to keep an eye out for that one. But yeah, it was a really good weekend. We were both there, obviously. We had some friends, lots of friends of ours. This was their first ever horror hound. We had our friend Zach, who worked on This Memory Christmas, and our friend Josh and Stephanie. And it was just a really good time. I think that I would have to say that out of the horror hound experiences I've had, this is probably, if not the best, one of the best. And I don't want to sound partial or anything, but for whatever reason, the ones in Indianapolis just seem to be more fun to me than the Cincinnati ones. Maybe it's the guests, maybe it's, the people that they draw in. I don't know what it is, but the Cincinnati ones are fun, but this one just kind of cranks it up a notch, at least for me.
I actually, I like the Indianapolis ones because, like, all the stuff like after hours is all in the hotel, and it's much easier to like get around and talk to people. I find the hotel at Cincinnati, I find the whole thing kind of claustrophobic, and it's like it's very dark in some places, and I mean it's kind of hard to just weave through, and it feels like everybody's a little bit more respectful of the property at Indianapolis because, I mean, Cincinnati, you've got people ripping down bathroom walls and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, if I were going to kind of compare it to something, like the Cincinnati one to me feels like the closest that a horror con can be to like a Comic-Con, where like it doesn't have that kind of intimate feeling that Indianapolis has, where, you know, you can talk to the vendors and, you know, you can talk to the other people that are there, and it's not like, okay, well, keep on moving because this whole aisle is completely crowded with people and you can't stop at any spot for more than 2 seconds because someone's going to be pushing you along.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the downside of conventions lately. It's been getting kind of ridiculous.
Yeah,
I was reading an article. I was reading an article today about conventions and like what they need to do, and how this author was like, well, they need to bring in the new blood of horror people, like from Starry Eyes and It Follows and like all that. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, yeah, but see, the reason like Kane and Doug and all them are booked at every show because their autographs are $20 a pop. These like newer actors and actresses all think like, oh, I'm going to charge $50 for an autograph and then another $10 for a photo, and it's just kind of like, really?
Yeah, and I know what you mean too. I mean, it would be awesome to meet some of these kind of new and up and comers, but at the same time, they don't have that nostalgia feeling where it's like, oh, well, like, I'm meeting somebody that was literally a part of my childhood, that I have some kind of, emotional resonance with, where, as a newer one, it's be like, oh, yeah, like, I loved It Follows. It was a lot of fun. I thought it was really original. But besides that, it's not like you have any cool stories because it just came out. So I kind of like the fact that they do go for kind of the 80s, 90s, because there is kind of a time, you get more of a time to appreciate these movies and appreciate these performances as opposed to something that, who knows if it's going to last the test of time.
Well, exactly. And then it's just like, I mean, I would love to have like a mix of old and new, but it seems like the only people that they want from anything new is American Horror Story and Walking Dead, and those people are going to charge an arm and a leg for everything because they can. So it's just kind of like damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean. And there's one good thing that I will mention is that I noticed there was at least 2 guests at this one that actually lowered their prices from what they were at Flashback. So that was kind of nice to see.
I don't know which ones you're referring to. It might be...
Well, this time, both Amanda and Ronnie, the photographs were included, and you didn't have to pay extra.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. But it's like when I met Heather, because we were talking about how we wish she was at Flashback for the Robert Englund photo op, and she's like, I love him, but I told him I can't do cons with him because he's a money sucker. and so, I mean, that makes sense why at Flashback people were changing photo and autograph because, I mean, people blew a lot of money in those Robert Englund photo ops.
Yeah, and I will say this is only the second time that I've done a photo op, but I got to give hats off to Horror Hound because it was so well organized for this photo op. I know that I had you cover the table, and I'm like, I don't know what time I'm going to be back. I'll be back as soon as I can. And literally, I was back like, my photo op was at noon, and I was back at like 12:15. So they really had that down, and they had a rhythm going, and it really went really well.
Yeah, I would say that I feel Texas Frightmare was my best organized photo op, but both of those had such long lines that I was in line forever. But yeah, I mean, Horror Hound they're good about that, where they're busting it out left and right as fast as they can. But also with Texas, this was the only photo op for like Elvira in costume and Ned and Skeet with the ghost face mask. Like, when it comes to like Whorehound, they've got multiple days of, because Robert's there the whole weekend, so they'll have like a little block on Saturday and Friday and Sunday, so that helps alleviate the lines as well.
No, and I think that's a really good idea to kind of have it where, you get to choose the day as opposed to just being like, okay, well, this is your set time, so you better be there at exactly this moment.
Yeah, exactly. And I much prefer the whole relaxed feel of like the Whorehound photo ops, because when you know it's just one at one time and it's something like big like Freddy in his makeup, that Freddy in makeup cue was ridiculous.
Yeah, and I mean, I finally got my Robert Englund, but I'm just like, I can justify 60, 360, not so much.
No.
But yeah, I mean, fun times all around. I didn't have any bad experience with any guests. There was one guest, I'm not going to name names, but one that I thought was quite overpriced, especially for the amount of work this person had done. And I'm actually surprised that this person didn't actually end up canceling, but this person actually had a decent line when I met them. So I guess they had been doing pretty well. So I'm just going to kind of leave it at that. If you guys were there, you guys probably know who I'm talking about, but I'm just like, really? You have to pay extra for a photograph? I mean, this person's done not a whole lot.
Oh, yeah. I think I know who you're talking about. And, yeah, definitely. But what about you? Have you seen anything of note as of late?
I'm trying to think. My mind has been so busy with just kind of working on stuff for Dismembering Christmas and this whole time that I haven't really had a chance to watch anything new. Oh, no, I saw The Editor. What am I talking about? I saw that last week, and I absolutely loved it. If you like giallos and you don't mind kind of this very ridiculous, over-the-top story, which, let's be honest, is what most giallos are, it's a lot of fun. It's beautifully shot. Some of the dubbing is deliberately off. The deaths are much over the top. I like that there's a movie within a movie, and the movie within a movie kind of has that orangey, very much Suspiria type blood, but then the stuff that's, quote unquote, actually happening, the blood looks real. So I liked that there was kind of that distinction between the two, and I just thought it was a lot of fun. It's not really a parody, but it's what I admired about it was the fact that it took itself quite seriously, but at the same time, you could tell they were having fun with it. Last week we talked about, or actually 2 weeks ago, last week we didn't have a podcast, but we talked about Lost After Dark and how we didn't really think it was all that successful at being kind of an 80s slasher homage. I think that The Editor does a much better job of trying to be like these movies, but at the same time telling its own story and kind of having fun with everything about it.
Well, and I mean, the thing of it is when it comes to like Lost After Dark, I mean, a slasher movie set in the 80s, it's been done. I mean, it's like, there's been so many like modern slasher movies that are like, we're just going to set it in the 80s, it's going to be so much fun. Whereas The Editor, I have not seen very many like pseudo giallos coming out nowadays that are kind of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We're doing this. So, I mean, hats off to them because that sounds very original, and I can't wait to check it out. Yeah,
and I got to say, Paz might not be the best actress in the world, But
No,
if
she's
there's a genre of horror that she is perfect for, it's this. Like, she nails it, and I have a feeling if she had been around in the 70s, Argento would have absolutely loved her and probably would have cast her in everything.
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, she definitely has that look that is in all of his movies too.
Right, and she has that very much that kind of Italian matter-of-fact acting where you're not quite sure if they're in on the joke or not, which totally works for a movie like this.
Yeah. No, I can't wait to check it out. I'm hoping to check it out sometime this weekend.
Awesome. Yeah, you'll definitely have to let me know what you think. Anything that you saw?
Okay, I've seen a bunch, but I'm just going to break down the two probably newest ones. I went and saw Bloodsucking Bastards in the theater, which is Office meets vampires, and I wasn't expecting anything, but I was really pleased with how it turned out. It was really funny, and I mean, there was some great gags and a lot of blood, and it was super entertaining. And then I went and saw The Visit today, which I really liked, but I had some problems with. I mean, no spoilers, obviously, but I didn't feel the need for it all to be documentary style. I kind of wish they would have melded them together. And sometimes with the kids, it's not the problem of the actors, because I thought the kid actors were great, but it's like the little brother's a rapper, so he raps all the time, and I thought that was really tedious. And then she's got like the Dawson's Creek 15-year-old speaking like a 40-year-old filmmaker. It was a little try hard, but other than that, like, I mean, I could get past all that because it was a very, very well done movie. All the actors were great in it, and I was very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, kind of. The Visit is one of those that I'm kind of like, I'm really curious about it. I'm mostly curious of the fact that he shot 3 different versions of the same movie. I don't know how much the listeners out there know. He actually shot this 3 different ways and edited it 3 different ways, where one version was straight up comedy, one version was straight up horror. The one that was released was the combination of the 2 cuts. I feel like
the combination one works very well. So I hope like the Blu-ray has the other 2 cuts, because I would love to see how, because I thought the balance was really well in this one, so I would love to see how the other 2 looked.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to kind of see, you know, and I know that M. Night Shyamalan has gotten a lot of crap lately. Some of it slightly deserved based on some of his film choices, but it's nice to see kind of a return to form, and I'm pretty pumped to check it out.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. Like, I loved The Sixth Sense, and I thought Unbreakable was good. Signs I really liked until the ending, but then it felt like he kind of started believing his own hype and thinking he was, like, God's gift to cinema, to the point where he, like, casted himself in The Lady in the Water as, like, the Messiah. Like, his work will save the... Like, it just got very preachy, and so it's nice for him to, like, tone it the hell down and just make a fun, spooky movie.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm definitely kind of pumped to check it out, and for the most part, I've heard nothing but good, or at least mixed good things. So, yeah, I mean, I will probably be checking it out in the near future.
Yeah. I can think of many worse ways to spend 95 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's short and to the point. So, yeah, there you go. Excited to check that one out. So we can jump right into our list of the best and the worst deaths for Nightmare on Elm Street. We're going to be going off our very best, and then we're going to be talking about kind of our runners-up, and then our very worst, and then kind of our runners-up for that. So we can jump right in. Andrew, what is your favorite death from the entire series?
Oh, Debbie turning into a roach. I mean, hands down, that was so batshit crazy and off the wall, and like they set it up where it's like, oh, you know, she's afraid of bugs. So, I mean, you think it's going to be something like, you know, Creep Show where it's the bugs are everywhere, or like Indiana Jones, like why does it? But no, Freddy just turns her into a bug and squashes her, and it's all very grotesque, but very, like, you can't stop watching it. And then at the same time, it's mixed together with this great dream sequence of Dan and Alice on like a time loop, going and starting again and going and starting again. So the whole like sequence is just really trippy and so well done.
I completely agree with you. To the point where this is actually my favorite death of the series as well. It's fantastic. The makeup effects in this are top notch. They have not aged a day, if anything. I think with kind of the influx of CGI, this might even look better today compared to some of the stuff than it did back then, because you can actually really appreciate the effects that go into this. But yeah, it's a fun death. It's original. It's over the top, but not to the point where, you know, it's campy, because it's legitimately a pretty creepy, scary death. And not only that, but, you know, we've talked about 4 before, and it definitely has some problems story-wise and stuff like that. But if 4 does one thing right, I think it's kind of the bringing in the idea of what they're afraid of or what their weaknesses might be is involved in their death. I mean, we also have Sheila with the asthma. I think that was a really interesting way to kind of turn the series and bring something new to it. Sadly, this is kind of really the only entry in the series that really kind of plays up on this, at least to this effect. But, yeah, it's a really fun death.
Yeah, and I mean, if there is one thing that I did find cheesy, it's when her arm gloves like hit the floor and they're like perfect down to her like red fingernails, and they just look like dish gloves that were on it. But I mean, that's just it's a tiny thing. But yeah, I mean, the special effects work in this movie, especially like that scene, and I mean when Freddy dies, and I mean, that's awesome. And it's like swaps between puppets and like oversized Freddy busts with real people pushing on it. Like, it's just great. And yes, I agree that 4 definitely has problems story-wise. I mean, for me, if you take away all the really cool special effects, there's not a whole lot there, but the cool special effects really make the movie, I mean, it just catapults it way high.
No, completely agree. It's a fantastic death and just a lot of fun in general. So what we did our top 5. What are some of your runners-up?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna just jump off of 4, and another one where I feel the special effects really stand up, and it's kind of a very surreal is, like you said, Sheila's asthma. I mean, that was so unsettling with the performances, the sound effects, and the makeup that they used on it, that it was hard to watch when I was a kid, and sometimes I'm still kind of like, ooh, but I mean, that one's just another top notch.
Yeah, I completely agree. Sheila didn't quite make my list, but yeah, that death, like, I still remember when I was a kid when, you know, the learning is so much Freddy, when it's kind of, you know, dripping in blood with the pen, and then she kind of, you know, puts her fingers around it. There's something very surreal about that death. And I think that when Nightmare on Elm Street is kind of at its best is kind of when it's playing with that kind of stuff. It's like, well, you know, why would she be, you know, playing with his blood and stuff like that? But it's something that would happen in a dream, where, you know, necessarily if that were real life, you know, probably not. But in the dream context of it, it really works. And I think when this series is kind of on point with that kind of stuff is when the deaths work the best.
Well, and down to like that overhead shot where the tiles on the floor progressively get smaller towards the middle, so you have that weird optical effect of like kind of everything's shrinking inwards. And I mean, yeah, you can't fault 4 visually, and if I do, I would just say sometimes it's a little bit too bright. I feel like they do a few too many daytime nightmares, but other than that, I tip my hat to that kind of visual work they did for it.
Yeah, I completely agree. So yeah, jumping on to another one on my list. I don't actually have any more from 4, but I'll jump onto one of mine from 3, and that's Philip's death from Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Gets turned into the marionette puppets, using his veins as strings. This death is so unsettling in so many ways. I don't particularly like the very end of this death, but the kind of walking with the veins, it's so disturbing, and it's even disturbing to this day. And it's really unnerving, for lack of a better word. And much like the other deaths that we've talked about so far, the effects are top notch. It's really creepy, and like I said, it holds up well.
Yeah, that was a very, like I said, like Debbie will be my favorite, but the other 4 are interchangeable, and this was my number 2 for a while. It's so trippy, and it's so creepy, and it fits his character, and I mean, it's this, and even the end doesn't bother me at all, because I mean, he's staging them to look like suicides. It's kind of perfect that he would walk Philip to the tower, but oh yeah, the visions of like the close-ups of his feet and stuff are just.
Well, I guess I should rephrase it. The part that I have a problem with that doesn't quite make sense is the walking to the door.
Well, I mean, I kind of let it lapse, because I mean that kind of stuff always is in, like, I mean, like Tina being pulled up the ceiling and like up the wall and across the ceiling, like it happens in the dream, but it happens in real life. So I mean, in the dream he was brought through the door. It's like Nancy falling through the chair and ending out in the dream. I mean, you kind of just got to go with it.
Yeah, I suppose that's a good point. So what's another one on your list?
Part 5. The unrated cut is the best version. If you can find that on YouTube, I highly suggest watching that, because the Blu-ray version, they do some weird audio loop where he pulls the tray off and like Greta starts screaming, but in the original cut she's just crying in that part, and they dubbed the screaming from the unrated cut as to where he's like scooping her guts out and feeding them to him. So that makes no sense. But part 5, that is probably the standout death scene in part 5. It's very surreal. The way it's filmed is very, very dark, but like the imagery is just the camera angles of like pulling the focus while they're at the table, and it's there's just something about it I thought was great, and it's one of, I would say, the highlights of the series in kind of a mediocre Nightmare on Elm Street film. But I mean, even though it's a mediocre Nightmare on Elm Street film, it's still miles better than Freddy's Dead, which is going to be on my bottom list a lot.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about 3 of our worst deaths, and actually 2 of the 3 for me are from part 6. So yeah, we'll be talking about that in a minute. Greta didn't quite make my list, only because it's Nightmare on Elm Street, and there's so many great deaths. But you're right. I mean, they kind of they touch on, it's never fully come out, but it's kind of touched on, possibly she has an eating disorder, and I like that. She, like, literally, she's being fed herself to death. That is so just icky. And everything about it's just really good. And you're right. I love the camera work in it. That's kind of like this big, fancy dinner party, and you have these guests laughing at her. Just all of this really works. And I think that, I guess if I have a problem with 5, I think that she's such a great, fun character that I wish that this death had been later on in the film, because I would have wanted more of Greta. That's kind of neither here nor there, but the death itself is great.
Yeah, the thing about 5 is I always kind of say, I'm like, the story's weak, but that one by far makes up for it in this gothic visual style. I mean, the camera work and the direction's beautiful. It just had the misfire of having New Line being like, no, change that, but you have 5 months to do this entire movie.
No, it is kind of a shame, but I mean, I guess the least, I mean, you're right. It's got a fantastic visual style. So another one on my list that we kind of talked about a little bit earlier, or at least you did. Obviously, Tina from the original Nightmare on Elm Street, drug up the ceiling, falls in a pool of her own blood. This is kind of one of those deaths that any kind of horror fan, especially horror fan of the 80s, remembers. I mean, if there's kind of one death from the entire series, and if you were saying, what's one standout death, I would be shocked if anyone picked any death more than this one, because it's so iconic that Wes plays tribute to it in New Nightmare with Julie dying, and kind of does a spin on that with it happening in the hospital with Dylan, and it's fantastic. You have a great performance by Amanda Weiss, just kind of, just like, you really feel for this girl, and that's something that you don't have a lot from horror movies today. And her death is brutal, and it's fantastic.
It did not make my list. I agree with you to a point, but I have a feeling most people will remember Johnny Depp's blood blender geyser thing, but only because it's Johnny Depp.
Yeah,
I would probably say, yep. I'm like, I find Tina's death to be much better. Like, the geyser of blood, it looks cool, makes no sense. None. It's just visually really cool. But yeah, Tina's death is way up there. That entire stock scene is just great.
Yeah, it's really well done, to the point where, you have this, and I think you make a good point too, whereas like Johnny's death is really cool in the fact that it's visually interesting, but there's no real build up to it. It just sort of happens and it's done, and that's it. His is actually number 5 on my list, because I think it's visually very interesting, but of the deaths, yeah, I'm definitely going to prefer Tina's of the 2.
Well, and the thing about Johnny Depp's is I kind of like, because the first 2 deaths in the movie have a lot of build-up, and it's a lot of, Freddy kind of taunting with them, whether it be like taunting Tina or taunting Nancy with Rod in the jail cell, whereas the reason I really do kind of enjoy Johnny Depp's is that it's just, you're expecting it to have a big build-up, and it's just literally claw up, he's down, blood geyser.
No, I could definitely get behind that, and especially the fact too, I like the cutting between Heather trying to warn him. I think that kind of adds a nice little tone to it to kind of make it a little bit more serious, as opposed to something that could have been very silly. Yeah, it's really good. So another one on your list?
See, this one was the hard one. But I'm going to go with Jennifer from Part 3, because that whole, the TV going out with Zsa Zsa Gabor and the sound effects of like the static with the like lines from the movie, like kind of weaving in and out, and then just the arms coming down, grabbing her and picking her up. Like it's very, very creepy and good. So I would have to say, plus, I mean, welcome to Primetime Bitch. Say what you will about Freddy's one-liners, but that is one of the best ones.
Oh, it's a fantastic death. Actually, this made my list as well. We talked about earlier, there's some logic problems with The Nightmare on Elm Street. This is kind of one of those deaths where there is some logic problems in the fact that I'm like, well, I suppose it's possible she could have committed suicide this way. It would have been very hard. I don't know how she would have, but the death itself is amazing. Visually, it's really cool. I love that it kind of ties into the fact of that she wants to be the television star, and that's kind of her goal in life. And that's what's really interesting about the Nightmare on Elm Street series is that it kind of plays on this idea of it gets to know these kids, and it uses their death somehow connected to that. And I think that that's part of the reason why the Nightmare on Elm Street films have become so successful and are still popular to this day, is because people can relate to that. And, if you do have a fear or you do have something that, you do have some kind of goal or dream in your life, when that's kind of played against you, who can't relate to that?
Well, and not only that, I mean, you hold up. I mean, when they're casting Nightmare on Elm Street films, like they're not going for, oh well, you know what, we're gonna go for the blonde with the big boobs who's gonna get naked even though she's not that good. Like they legitimately tried to find the best actors for the part, and there's a reason why the Nightmare on Elm Street series has spawned the most kind of steady working actors, is because I don't feel that they have the same kind of stigma as Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw and Halloween. Because I think even the critics thought, well, there's so much imagination and like effort put into these films as opposed to, well, we're just going to have them go to a different cabin and get killed off.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Even Roger Ebert, who was not a fan of either series, kind of said that Nightmare on Elm Street was the classier version of Friday the 13th, which I do agree with. I will give him credit in the fact that he did like the first one and he liked the seventh one. The ones in between he liked here and there. But, they're really good. So do you have any more left in your list of the best?
Oh, see, well, those were the only five. I mean, I have a few that almost made the list, like Karen in Dream Warriors almost made the list. It didn't because I still kind of can't get past the cheesy costume with the mohawk. I mean, I love it. I love Jennifer Rubin, but I mean, it's especially when everybody else is still in their pajamas and she's wearing this bad 80s thing. But I mean, that is one of the better acted deaths, because you can really see like the fear in her face when he's got the needles and the little arms like suckling for the heroin is just, it's very unnerving. And I'm glad that the exploding eyeball gag did not work, because the way it is now, where you just see that one vein like inflate up her face as she's screaming, is just, it's too good.
No, I agree with you, and I'm glad that they did it kind of the way they did. So we only have like a minute left, so I'm going to quickly run through my worst. Rick from Part 4, just an obvious cop-out. Spencer from 6, Too Funny doesn't work. John Doe from 6, also just completely useless. And too Looney Tunesy. It's dumb.